On numerous occasions, I thought I had successfully showcased every single side quest there is in the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. I've traveled across Cyrodiil, traversed to the Shivering Isles, and pleased the Divines with the Knights of the Nine DLC. I recently went through all of the minor DLCs and even did the Vampire Cure quest, so what could possibly be left? Well, as it would turn out, not only do I still have to do the Master Training quests, there's a settlement side quest that's eluded me to this day. I have no clue how I missed it. I've scrolled through and searched various sites to make sure I hit everything, and I only just recently noticed this one lingering in the background. Unfortunately, this mission is fairly small and straightforward. I tried my best to share some of my thoughts and opinions on the objective itself, as well as the backstory. Then, I thought I'd share some theories I had for the story itself. Even though this is a fairly short adventure, I'd be interested in hearing your ideas on the whole thing down below. As per usual, the facts and information provided are brought to you by the game itself and the unofficial Elder Scrolls pages. The quest in question today is titled Revenge Served Cold. I think part of the reason I didn't know of this quest's existence is because the settlement is small and it's placed perfectly out of sight from the roads and nearby waypoints. My closest discovered location to the settlement is Mephalla's Daedric Shrine. It's located in the Heartlands just above the Imperial City. Traveling east, I crossed through some rolling hills, rocky terrain, and looked upon the start of the Gerald Mountains. After covering a brief distance, I noticed the settlement icon pop up on my compass. Getting a bit closer and formally discovering Harm's Folly, my mind was honestly blown. At this point, I really didn't think there were many more new locations for me to discover. Sure, maybe I haven't been in the odd cave here and there, but a whole settlement was pretty thrilling. As mentioned before, Harm's Folly is pretty tiny. It consists of one shack and a small piece of farmland. When I arrived, a man was wandering around outside. However, as soon as I dismounted my horse, he quickly scurried off into his cottage. The door was locked, and it was considered trespassing if I went on in. Trying to open it, I must have timed it perfectly because I didn't need to pick it, and the man wasn't concerned about my presence. He had a humble setup, sticking with the necessities and keeping around old furniture. Approaching the Breton, Corrick Northwode, I began to speak with him.
Please, I implore you, help me avenge my wife's death. Barely a week ago, I left Harm's Folly to go buy supplies as I usually do once a month. What a fool I was to leave my wife alone. The goblins must have been watching me, as they knew right when to strike. I could hear Kayleen's screams from far away. Those wretched beasts killed her. Filthy animals. Had I only been there to stop them. I'll tell you how you can help. Kill those things, every last one of them. They destroyed everything I hold dear. In their greed, the creatures grabbed a jade amulet off of Kayleen's body. Bring me back that amulet so I may use it to remember her by. Exhausted Mine is not far to the southeast. Be careful. Its many twists and turns hide the goblin hordes.
It never fails to amaze me when I hear about goblins and ogres doing things like this. On the surface, they seem like brutish, savage creatures that aren't very intelligent. However, their ability to plan and carry out attacks like these really goes to show just how advanced they are. I know there's a whole bunch of lore regarding them integrating into society and all of that, but still, it's neat to see firsthand. As Corrick incorrectly stated, Exhausted Mine is actually southwest of the settlement. Reaching it in no time, I could see that there were goblins guarding the entrance. Readying myself, I pulled out my blade and went in for the attack. I've always said, and maybe not necessarily to anybody else, goblins go from one of the most dismissible enemies in the game to some of the most difficult. After a certain level, when all you face are warlords and shamans, the former have so much health and the latter deals so much damage. On top of that, the shamans often conjure a headless zombie to help them out in battle. Normally that's not really something to worry about. But for what I was about to deal with, tight spaces and small corners, they did their job nicely at blocking me from getting to their master. Once the entrance was clear, I approached Exhausted Mine and spotted some skeletal remains. I wondered if this was an unfortunate adventurer or some poor wanderer who got dragged off. I think my upcoming theory explains this nicely, but for now, I'll leave it up to interpretation. Do goblins eat the bodies? Do they kill them and leave the corpse as a warning? Who knows? In any case, I lined up outside the dungeon and went on in. Exhausted Mind was exhausting. There were 3 zones that I needed to get through, and every single one had its fair share of goblins. Warlord, Shaman, it was either I'd be spending up to a minute in battle, or I'd be taking heavy shock damage. In my opinion, this is a quest that I think is best done as early as possible. Get it out of the way and forget about it. This mission's level dependent time versus reward ratio isn't worth it. It could be if there were better drops, even perhaps a boss chest would have been fine. Maybe it's my fault for not checking all of the containers, but the ones I actually looked into only contained modest sums of gold. I guess if you're really strapped for cash though, the 6 flawless diamonds you receive at level 17 and above can be pretty helpful. I found myself having to constantly swap between weapons and recharge the ones that were out of juice. I went from Goldbrand to the Sword of Madness to Mehrunes Razor and back again. When possible, I'd pull out repair hammers and perform maintenance on my gear. If I was lucky, I'd only have to deal with 1 goblin at a time. If I had normal luck though, or was simply unfortunate, I'd be facing upwards of 2 to 3 at a time. Strong health potions were flying out of my inventory, soul gems were getting sapped up, and repair hammers were falling apart. So far, I've been complaining a lot about this quest, and while I do think it's warranted, I've learned a valuable lesson. Get anything involving copious amounts of goblins out of the way first. Don't wait until they're all shamans and warlords. Moving away from the doom and gloom, let's talk a little bit about this story. Corrick says that about a week ago, he went on his monthly supply trip to who knows where, either Shadenhall or the capital. He left his wife behind, which I'm unsure if he normally does, and in his absence, the goblin force struck. They raided the settlement, killed Kayleen, and took anything worth value. As you'll soon see, Northwode kept some of his fortune on him, as that's what the player is rewarded with. Now, the conversation is going to turn very meta, and all of this can be chalked up to Bethesda's vision and design, but humor me a little as these are just my thoughts. What I want to know is, why would Corrick and his wife, Kayleen, build, buy, or even just stay at such a secluded location where not even half a kilometer away there's a dungeon crawling with goblins? It's definitely common knowledge that they're savage creatures of opportunity and that they shouldn't be underestimated. How on Nirn would you feel comfortable living there knowing that at any moment they could strike? Harm's Folly is so secluded that the nearest place they could even look for help is probably one of the major cities, or if they're lucky, maybe Ayleswell. Above all, how could he have left a loved one behind with a severe threat like that at his doorstep? Northwode was playing with fire, and of course, he got burned. Next, according to the UASP, Corrick is a natural warrior. He even carries around a leveled mace. Why he couldn't come into Exhausted Mind and do this himself, or even just offer my character help, is beyond me. He's a man who just lost his entire world and is seeking revenge. He seems like a capable fighter, so why not at least accompany me on the hunt? I seriously doubt that farming is important to him right now. This leads me into my last point, which I think ties pretty much everything together. Before leaving, Corrick said that Exhausted Mind's tunnels and pathways twist and turn and are dimly lit. To me, this implies that he knows the dungeon's layout, that he's been in here before. Why could that be? Well, my theory goes as follows. Starting with the cave itself, it was once used as a mining operation. It's very well in the name. There were probably plenty of workers, and that could have included Corrick and Kayleen. After all, they live right beside the place. At some point in time, the mine must have gotten overrun with goblins. They likely migrated from one of the other caves, forts, or ruins, perhaps even for the precious minerals and gems that Exhausted Mind provided. The workers were slain, hence all of the skeletons and remains that we see littered around, and the only ones to make it out were the capable fighters, Corrick, Northwode, and maybe Kayleen. Depending on the timeline, this could have been a recent ordeal, rendering the duo incapable of moving to a new plot of land. However, it was probably more than a while ago, as it's apparent through their crops and farmland that they were trying to live simple lives. This could have been due to Corrick's ego, and maybe pride, insisting that he could provide all the protection that the couple needed. The goblins, creatures of opportunity, angry and wounded from Northwode's rampage, bound their time, learned Corrick's schedule, and hit him where it hurt the most, killing Kayleen. I don't think it's a far-fetched idea. Of course, there are some points that can be disputed, and as per usual, everything could be chalked up to Bethesda's design. Nevertheless, it's fun to think about the possibilities. Eventually, I found myself working through Zone 3 of Exhausted Mine and came across a goblin nether boss. The UESP explicitly calls out what I experienced. Killing this thing was like a breath of fresh air. It's the only NPC that doesn't level with the player, and therefore it only took a few swings with my blade to kill it. After its enforcers were also defeated, I went looting and came across the Jade Amulet. Picking it up, I received a journal update and thanked the divines that I could finally get out of this place. The nether boss was pretty much at the end of the line for the dungeon anyways, as behind it was a small tunnel leading to a dead end. Leaving the dungeon, it was dark out, and to me this was very telling of my time spent in there, as I went on in during the afternoon. I did have to force a couple of waits for the regeneration, but it was still comical to me. Returning to Harm's Folly and entering the cabin, I handed the necklace over to Northwode.
What news do you bring me from Exhausted Mine? Then it's finally done. The goblins have paid with their blood, and my wife's brutal slaying is avenged. You risked life and limb for a cause that wasn't your own. For that I'm grateful. Please, accept these gems as a token of my gratitude. They're all I have left of value, but you must have them. I insist. You will be included in my prayers forever. May the divines smile upon you.
6 flawless diamonds in hand, it seems like my work here is done. Interestingly, if you encounter Corrick again, he always says the same thing.
Kayleen's grave is outside if you wish to pay your respect.
For the life of me, I couldn't find her grave anywhere. Finally, I opened my eyes and saw that it was at the side of the house. Interacting with it, it displays the message, "May my grace protect the valiant." It then casts an active effect on the player, fortifying both strength and fatigue for 300 points for a duration of 600 seconds. During the mid to late hours of the morning, Corrick can even be seen paying his respects to his late wife. What happens to the lone Breton from here is unknown. Maybe he continues on with the rest of his life at Harm's Folly, waiting for the day the goblins strike again and reunite him with Kayleen. With that, thus ends the quest, Revenge Served Cold. I'd love to hear your thoughts and theories on this quest, albeit there's not much to discuss here, and until next time, keep on adventuring.